Hey everyone, welcome to day 3 of the NFL draft coverage here at the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. I am Anthony Kazenza coming at you live. Thanks for your patience for those who have been attempting to watch us live on day 3. Again, a little bit of a fluid schedule with the pace of the draft and everything else that's happening with the team, and just the flow of the draft. It's caused us to be a little bit more fluid with our schedule. We've had to switch up times, etc. So sorry for those of you who have been kind of checking in and seeing if we've taken the air. Like I said, a little bit of a fluid schedule given the pace of things. We kind of had an outline as to scheduling, as to how the draft normally goes, but with the online draft flow and everything, it's kind of been a little bit of an adjustment on our part. But we appreciate you still tuning in, however you may be joining us, whether it's through Cincy Jungle's Facebook page, through our YouTube channel, or other varieties. We appreciate it. And as always, you can get this show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Megaphone, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Cincy Jungle. The boys at Cincy Jungle have been killing it with their coverage. So approval polls, analysis of picks, and then the immediate announcement of picks, all that good stuff. So keep it there. Keep it through the weekend, because all those guys, myself a little bit included, but all those guys are going to be also announcing the undrafted free agents that the Bengals will be bringing on board. So that's something to keep it tabs on as well. So it's been a lot to process here, but the Cincinnati Bengals, we're going to announce they're about 8 picks away from, as we sit here right now on Saturday afternoon, they're about 8 picks away from being on the clock again. The Cincinnati Bengals have made 5 selections so far in the NFL draft. And for those joining us live, you can see this is courtesy of CBS, their NFL page on CBS.com. You see the picks and the grades here made. Basically, according to CBS, all A's and B's, including the somewhat surprising to some people, the defensive end pick, Khalid Kareem, the edge player out of Notre Dame. We'll talk about him. So we talked yesterday quite a bit about Burrow, Higgins, and Wilson. Obviously, kind of value with Higgins at the top of the second round. You see the rapport that those two have built from working out together this offseason with Jordan Palmer and company. So they, a lot to like about that potential connection there. Logan Wilson filling a big need at linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals. And then on day 4, they have the first pick of the draft. If you've listened to me on this show before, I said, I think Hakeem Davis-Gaither is a guy, he could have been a third-round target for this team, but I think he'll be available in the 4th round or on day 3 because of the medical stuff. He's got edge rush ability. He's got athleticism. He's a little small, but between the medicals and his size, he fell a little bit. And, he was there. I think this is exactly what you use day 3 picks for, 4th-round picks for, in terms of guys that have medical questions, guys that have questions about size, but their tape speaks volumes. And obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals had a high level of interest in this kid from the get-go. And linebacker still was the greatest position of need. They addressed Josh Bynes in free agency, but they lost Nick Vigil. They cut Preston Brown. And behind Bynes, there are a lot of rotational guys that maybe are more special teams guys. You got your Jordan Evans, Hardy Nickersons, that sort of thing. And now you bring in these 2 guys who are these 2 guys, meaning Wilson and Davis-Gaither. You bring those 2 guys who should be able to come in and compete for spots right away, or compete for roles right away. The issue and the concern with Davis-Gaither, it's not just the foot surgery. I was unaware of a knee issue. I was more aware of the foot surgery he had in March, but there are reports of a knee situation being more of a bone-on-bone type of situation where, and that is not good there. So, maybe it's a guy who is only plays a short term for the Cincinnati Bengals, but plays effectively in that short term. Maybe it's a guy that who comes in, and it's not going to be an issue. It's one of those things that teams were just skittish on him, and he ends up having a fine, long, healthy career. We don't know, but it is something, especially in the landscape that we're this is critical to note, especially in the landscape that we're in right now, where teams are not able to get in-person appointments or interviews with a lot of these guys and maybe have their own medical staffs check things out. That's why teams are kind of taking guys with a lot of the medical stuff either off the board, or they're falling real late. You're seeing a Natani Muti, the guard out of Fresno State, the talented kid. He fell quite a bit. You're seeing Prince Tega Winogo. He was a guy who fell quite a bit because he had some injury issues that caused him to sit out the Senior Bowl. Trey Adams, another guy from Washington, big tackle, caused him to fall quite a bit because of the medical stuff. So it's kind of where we're at with teams and how they're not being able to evaluate certain players the way they want to because of the COVID crisis. So then we move on, and the Bengals select Khalid Kareem, excuse me. I was going to say Karam, but I knew that wasn't right. Khalid Kareem out of Notre Dame, the edge player. This was maybe not as popular of a pick because the Cincinnati Bengals, as of yet, have not taken, as we sit here, and we'll announce the 6th round pick coming up here in just a second, but the Cincinnati Bengals have not picked an offensive lineman to this point, interior or outside guys. Right before they made this pick, the Cincinnati Bengals saw Dallas move up and take Tyler Biadasz right in front of them. Jack Driscoll went the pick before that, or a couple of picks before that, the tackle out of Auburn. So all of a sudden, right when they were sitting there, they're thinking, hey, we're going to have our pick of one of these guys at least, and both of them went right there. So they've told us publicly, whether we wanted to believe it or not, that they like the state of their offensive line more than we do. You have to understand, essentially, in their eyes, and it's a cliche thing, the Cincinnati Bengals are getting essentially another draft pick in Jonah Williams, a tackle coming to them this year. So maybe they look at it that way. They like Fred Johnson. They apparently like Bobby Hart and what he showed in the last month of the season. They like the state of the offensive line more than we do. Maybe they've got hopes for Billy Price, Michael Jordan. These are all guys who should be in the mix for roles. So while some of those guys had up and down seasons, whether it be last year or the past couple of seasons, they have a lot to prove. They seem to like the state of the offensive line more than we do. The other thing to note, the Bengals have sniffed around edge rushers and rotational pass help over the past, really since last season. Shaq Barrett was a guy that they brought in for a visit. He ended up having an outstanding season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bengals also looked at Chris Smith. He ended up signing with Carolina. They brought in Derek Wolfe for a visit. They've looked at rotational pass rush help. Now, this kid isn't – my understanding of this kid and in reading up on him a little bit, I saw someone on Twitter. I can't remember. I wish I could credit who it was, but they said – someone called him an edge rusher, and someone corrected him and said edge setter. I think that to me was a bit more in line with who this kid is. This is a kid who, does things. He's a well-rounded defensive end, kind of like Michael Johnson, right? Michael Johnson was a guy who he had a couple of years with explosive numbers of sacks, but for the most part, it was about 5, 6, 7 sacks a year. Played well against the run as well, and set the edge very well, set up other players to be successful. And the Bengals had some of those great Mike Zimmer defenses with Michael Johnson there. I'm not saying this kid's going to be Michael Johnson, but in the same vein, he is a kid that can play the run pretty well, set the edge pretty well, and occasionally get to the passer. If you listen to Mel Kiper Jr.'s breakdown of him when the Bengals made the pick, Mel Kiper kind of said, he kind of never really exploded off the film. But he did things kind of pretty well. He did everything kind of pretty well. And there were times where he had a couple of good games and then he would taper off a little bit. So that's what caused him to go to the 5th round. I think the thing is here, and the big problem I think some of the people have with this pick is it wasn't offensive line. And I think, they're sitting here saying, where's the offensive line help? Where's the offensive line help? Maybe this guy wasn't talked about in terms of a lot of Bengals mock drafts, not on a lot of people's radars. But, he was a guy, I think he was in the top 100 in terms of the PFF post-Senior Bowl rankings. He was right around there. Now, granted, that probably changed as more months went on, but around February, as I looked back at some things, he was kind of in their top 100 of players. A coach's kid, Matt Minich, who was on this program, he noted that he's a coach's kid. Davis-Gaither, same thing. So the character thing, right? The Bengals had a chance to take Sadiq Charles, who went a few picks after Davis-Gaither. Maybe even a bigger need, maybe even a more talented player by some accounts, but problems, off-field problems. And the Bengals are not going down that road. Willie Gay was a guy they could have looked at. They didn't go that route. They went with guys who are a little bit more high character and a little bit more trustworthy in terms of what they can bring to the Bengals. But I think that, you look at what the Bengals have done and you got to be pretty pleased. The problem is this is a year where if the Bengals had a couple more picks, you may be able to say, okay, there's your offensive lineman snuck in with another 4th round pick. You can kind of, if the Bengals had the amount of picks they had in last year's draft, they would have set themselves up in a great way. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I saw some people asking about Andy Dalton. Absolutely zero news on that from what I've seen in terms of a possible trade to get a pick. And now we're entering the 6th round. So I don't know if there's going to be any movement. And if so, I mean, you're looking at potentially a guy with minimal immediate impact. So that's kind of where we're at with this thing. But overall, I think the Bengals have done some, especially with their first 4 picks. I think they made some very, very good sound picks, marrying value with need. Some people said that Logan Wilson kind of had a little bit of a high 2nd round grade, maybe even a late 1st, maybe like a Leighton Vander Esch type of value, if you want to look at a positional value type of situation that way. So, Davis-Gaither, a 2nd round talent, probably 3rd round talent, but fell because of the medical stuff to the top of the 4th. And this is where it is beneficial to sit at the top of rounds, right? Where you're getting players that probably could have gone in the previous round, but you're getting them in the next round. You're getting good value, and the Bengals seem to be doing that. So, look, a lot of people aren't thrilled with the last pick. I think edge was a positional need that they wanted to address. Khalid Kareem out of Notre Dame is the guy they chose, and CBS seems to like the value of the pick at number 5 in their 5th round there. So the Bengals are doing pretty good work this year. The other thing I want to address, the Bengals are a few minutes away from being on the clock here. Pick 177, Chiefs are on the clock. The Bengals pick at 180 currently. The other thing to note, if you've been following me on Twitter, the Cincinnati Bengals are seemingly using a lot of analytics, namely in the form of potentially PFF. Joe Burrow in the 94s in terms of basically the highest graded college quarterback I think they've ever had by their metric standards. T. Higgins I think he was about 91, and that was before the championship game. Logan Wilson right around 90. In terms of their overall scores. Davis-Gaither had high 80s in terms of pass rushing grades over the past 2 years, and this kid was low 80s. The Khalid Kareem, he was low 80s in 2018 from an edge defender standpoint. So they are getting guys that graded well by PFF metrics, and they are probably using that, and maybe more so this year because they have to rely a bit more on that than these in-person appointments and all that kind of stuff. They've needed to do that a bit more than in years past because of the COVID crisis. But these are guys that they're familiar with from the Senior Bowl. The coaching there really helped them out. So that's probably why you're seeing the effect you're seeing in terms of the guys they're picking. I'm seeing a lot of other stuff. Rob Ferderer from Facebook says we needed linebackers and we got two good ones. So that's good. I saw some stuff about what's going on with Andy Dalton. Again, very, very quiet there. And by the way, there's some people also for a long time trade for Trent Williams. Well, he's gone, and apparently the Bengals have missed out on a potential steal with Trent Williams because the 49ers got him for a 5th-round pick in 2020 and a 3rd-round pick next year. So he is not going to be a Bengal. We are going to be joined here by James Clayton, producer of the show, joining us from London, England. If you remember, James was one of our interviewers in the Alex Highsmith interview that we did basically a week ago. So, James, are you there? Can you hear me? How you doing?
Yeah, loud and clear. How's it going?
Going well. Thanks for joining us. I know I got you a little last minute here. I'm kind of going. I told the folks here earlier we're going on the fly a little bit because the draft is kind of a fluid schedule, but that's to be expected, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, good to have you with us. Look, I've got some of these grades here. Quickly, before we announce the Bengals pick in just a few minutes here, it looks like pick 177 is in. So we're about 3 picks away from the Bengals being on there. Your thoughts on what the Bengals have done so far, particularly in these middle rounds? I think it's thoughts are pretty obvious about pick number 1. But what the Bengals have done really overall, obviously throw in Burrow there, but your thoughts on what the Bengals have done effectively in rounds 2 through 5 and really addressing the needs in rounds 3 through 5.
Yeah, I think they've kind of managed to find the kind of middle way between BPA and need. I think a lot of us thought that maybe they'd, address O-line, but as a lot of people have mentioned, he's gone. Basically that I think, Zach Taylor hinted earlier in the process that, they're not going to go O-line, and that actually they really like players like, Michael Jordan and Bobby Hart and Fred Johnson. But I think picks round 6 is coming up very, very quick, very, very soon. And I think I'd like them to go O-line here, personally. I think there are some good guys on the board. I think is Prince Tega still on the board?
I believe so. To be quite honest, setting up here, I've lost a little bit of track of what's been happening over the past 10 or so picks. So I had a brain fart earlier. I tweeted out that I thought Terrell Lewis was going to be available in the top of the 5th, and it turns out he was he was gone at the end of the 3rd. There was just a lot to keep up with, so that I made a mistake there. But Cincinnati, the Cowboys are on the clock here. The Bengals will be coming up in terms of their potential pick. But do you like what they've done so far with these picks, especially in the middle rounds?
Yeah, I really like. I think a lot of people thought, getting both Wilson and ADG was a bit kind of excessive, but I think again, especially when they got Davis-Gaither, I think it was actually just them going for BPA. I think it was PFF said that of like the 500 so snaps he took in his senior year, that he rushed the passer and on the edge against the tackle like 200 times. So again, it's a kind of nice chess piece for Anarumo, and I think they're getting the kind of same kind of chess piece type player with Khalid Kareem. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they go for a kind of interior, 3 technique guy here, or because I mean there was a lot of rumors, especially with Blacklock at the top of round 2, and I think it was Ben Baby said that they would look to address interior D-line at some point.
Right. You're right, and that's possible. The other thing too that a lot of people are forgetting, and I'm going to try and stream in here the draft coverage here, so maybe hopefully people can kind of see what's going on there. But I think what people are also forgetting is the defensive back. They may look at another corner here. Some have gone off the board, so that's something to kind of think about, but could be an option here. I don't know if this video is going here. We'll try again, but the Bengals appear to be on the clock here. We'll try and stream that in here for the announcement of the pick. But Davis-Gaither's a guy that brings versatility, kind of a hybrid piece in a defense. Can give you some pass. What's that?
They took Bradley and the Cowboys. Interesting pick.
So we're having a little trouble streaming here. Unfortunately, we'll try this again. But the Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. Apparently, the pick is in. So we'll get to that in just a second. I think, unfortunately, ESPN's site is not working for us as well as I had hoped. It's not working there. So we'll announce it live here. So the Bengals took an offensive lineman, and it is a player that Coach Matt Minich really likes, Hakeem Adeniji, the offensive tackle out of Kansas. 48 consecutive starts to finish the career. So that is a player. If, by the way, you wanted to see some day 3 gems, go look at Matt Minich's film review of Hakeem Adeniji. He was all over that guy. So credit to Matt Minich, who, by the way, will be joining us at the conclusion of round 6. We'll be back on the air. He will be joining us, as will John Sheeran. We are joined right now by producer of the show, James Clayton, who's been instrumental in getting us quite a few interviews and other opportunities here. But James, the Bengals get tackle. They didn't get a guy that maybe some fans liked or knew about. But this is a kid I think has a lot of upside, and not Kansas isn't a powerhouse football program, but I think if some film guys, if you go back and look at it, they like this kid.
Yeah, I think that's good value. If you look at, most big boards, PFF. I can't remember exactly where he has. I could look it up now, but I'm pretty sure they had him at, a lot higher than 180. I think they announced the pick as a guard, which is interesting. Or did I get that wrong?
I have it muted, so I didn't actually hear the true announcement there. But he's a guy that brings you tackle guard versatility. Exactly. I think the issue, and that's what you want at this point in the draft, especially for a guy that has a number of starts. I think it was 40 plus starts, consecutive starts. So he's durable. He's got some good film, and potentially you get versatility. And that's, James, we were talking about this with the Davis-Gaither pick. That's what you want when you have a limited amount of picks. You want guys that can do a couple of different things for you. So Gaither can play in space a little bit and rush the passer. A kid like this could be a tackle guard swing. I think probably if they did announce him as a guard, they probably did so because maybe they picture him more as a guard. The athleticism for the NFL level as a tackle maybe isn't there, but in a pinch, he could be a backup tackle and bring some versatility.
Yeah, maybe he's one of those guys that comes in, maybe competes at guard, probably wouldn't win a starting spot, but as he kind of, learns the game, can maybe move back out to tackle. But yeah, I agree with your thing. I think they're really looking for first kind of versatile guys. And Khalid Kareem, again, I think the one guy you missed out is a guy that can play on the edge, but also kind of move into 5 technique. I saw I think it was his NFL.com comparison was Kerry Wynn, not to scare anyone.
Really?
But, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
But probably not that accurate, but Yeah, I think it's really telling. They're going for guys they think can, especially in the kind of later kind of rounds where they're projected backups, guys that can play a couple of positions.
Yeah, so the Bengals, I mean, they wait till round 6, but they get a tackle guard. Some people are saying it was announced as a guard in our live chat. Some people are saying it was announced as a guard. It was announced as a tackle. It's like, well, to be honest with you, if you know anything about this team, they like versatility, and they have long loved versatility on the offensive line, guys who could play multiple positions. There was a question that someone had asked before this pick was made. What about Calvin Throckmorton, the guy who kind of plays – he's kind of a Swiss Army knife guy along the offensive line, played at Oregon.
They loved him at the Super Bowl, the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think, again, that maybe shows that was the kind of, the archetype that they wanted, a guard, tackle. I mean, Adeniji doesn't have any starting, as you said. I think he played just 4 years straight up at tackle.
Right.
But, yeah, I think it's interesting that they want guys that can play guard and tackle.
Throckmorton is a guy, I don't even know that he will be drafted. He's a guy who's versatile, and I could be wrong. He might have flown off the board while we were talking here. I hadn't paid too close attention, but I think he's still available. So, but he's a guy that kind of like Keaton Sutherland, the guy they grabbed last year as an undrafted free agent, the guy from A&M that Jim Turner was familiar with. Throckmorton, if he makes it as an undrafted free agent, that could be a guy that they look at bringing in because of their interest level in him at the Senior Bowl, because of his versatility. That's where I see a guy like that coming. Before I get to a couple of other questions, again, this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. He's James Clayton, coming to us from London. So happy to have him with us. He's been with us for a couple of months now in a producer role, helping us land some of these interviews that we've had. And we're happy to have him with us, breaking down some of these picks, especially these later ones today. The James, you talked about him a little bit. I think there's a little bit of a mixed opinion on the 5th round pick there, the edge player. Any other additional insight you have on him? Because, I think a lot of people kind of were taken aback a little bit. You could have had a Prince Tega Winogo, a couple of these guys, Jack Driscoll, Taylor Biotic went like a pick or two before.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of people were kind of unfortunately playing that against this kid. But look, I don't think he's ever going to be a star in the league. I don't think there's enough athleticism, et cetera, for him to be a starting player, but as a rotational piece up front, the Bengals have mentioned and let everybody know they wanted rotational edge rush help. And maybe this is a kid who provides that for them, maybe in the mold of like an Andrew Brown. This kid's not the D tackle moving to DN once in a while. He's kind of an edge guy, but he is a movable piece. So maybe he's a rotational guy in there that can get you a few sacks a year, get you some pressures, and just keep guys fresh up front.
Yeah, I think he again is a nice rotational piece. Maybe he is, I don't know, Andrew Brown's replacement. If he's a guy who's probably on the bubble as of now, especially if they go interior in the round 7. But he ticks the boxes we were talking about. Recurring themes in especially these day 3 picks. You see, I don't think he went to the Senior Bowl, if I'm right. But he's versatile, and also importantly, he's a high character guy. And I'm pretty sure he was a captain.
Yep.
Notre Dame, and that's the kind of, and he interviewed very well at the combine. Seems like a fairly charismatic guy, and that's the kind of guy that they look as if they're after, and they don't want.
Yep, and coach's kid. So they like that. So there's, I mentioned that before you joined us, Davis-Gaither and their 5th round pick there were both coaches' kids, and they had to like that. I think they were both captains. Yeah. And so, I think the Bengals did weigh heavily some of their interview time, et cetera, with some of these guys. So that's what made the pick here. But Adeniji is a good value there. I don't foresee him coming in and taking over the starting right tackle job or a starting right guard job right away, but definitely could compete with that open guard spot if that's where he was announced. Maybe supplant Bobby Hart in a year or two. Bobby Hart was a 7th round pick himself. So these guys on the offensive line, they get starting opportunities. If they're day 3 picks, that happens, especially interior offensive linemen. That happens. So I don't know that he's going to be a day 1 starter, but this is a guy with his versatility and some of his film, his durability. They got to like some of that.
Yeah. There's Bobby Hart, Fred Johnson, who I still think has a chance at starting. I think he was was he 7th round or undrafted?
I think he was undrafted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. It says it all. I think there's a strong chance he might get some. He might, if there's a lot of injuries, hopefully not. We've got pretty injury prone O-line historically, that he might come in and get some reps at tackle or guard. I also wanted to ask you, just kind of by popular demand, about Thad Moss.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was one of the ones I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bengal fandom saw, I was seeing on live streams and whatnot, that they should look at him in the 4th round, which I was very, very strongly against. But I mean, now you're going into the 7th round. There is some value there in the 7th round. I think in the 7th round, you just take any guy you think can contribute. And he has the relationship with Burrow. Maybe it is something they'll have to think about.
It's the relationship factor and rapport with Burrow has to be taken into account. By the way, it looks like Netani Muti was taken. He's not. I don't believe he's available as of the 184th pick with Carolina. What's that?
He was the pick after Adeniji. Interestingly.
Yeah. Okay. So I missed that while we were talking about it. But Prince Tega Winogo is still, as of now, available, I believe. He's one of Mel Kiper Jr.'s best available. And then of course there's Lamar Jackson, not that Lamar Jackson, the cornerback out of Nebraska, who's an interesting name. You've also
there as well.
Yeah, and you've also got. Who's an interesting player is Eno Benjamin, the running back. I know running back is not necessarily what the Bengals need right now, but you've got Joe Mixon's contract coming up after this year. Giovanni Bernard's getting up there in age. Rodney Anderson coming off of 2 ACL injuries in 2 consecutive years. There might be a need for someone like that, especially if they can bring a little bit of receiving skills. So Eno Benjamin would be interesting, but I think here, he'd be good value. But let's talk about Moss. I mean, this might just kind of be, hey, let's take a flyer on him. If you look at him, he's not going to test well athletically. He's not, unfortunately for him, he's got his father's name, but he does not have that skill set. But he is a big body. He knows how to move the chains. He came on in the red zone late in the year and was a nice security blanket for for Joe Burrow there. I like you was saying, I maybe 5th round was the earliest I would have gone with him. And even then I wasn't sure that I was so comfortable at that point. 7th round pick, especially if you've got a Prince Tega Winogo off the board, maybe you're not enamored with some of these defensive backs that are left. That to me, maybe that makes sense. Or if he somehow makes it through, maybe that's one of your undrafted free agents.
Yeah, I've just got to announce, I think Miami just took a long snapper. So congratulations.
Okay.
I think, Miami's had an interesting loss, to say the least. But I'm not sure about Moss still, even in the 7th. There are a lot of other good tight ends.
Yeah, Hunter Bryant, I believe, is still available out of Washington.
Who's a really interesting, because I mean, he's like a kind of between a big slot guy, really has very little blocking ability for an inline tight end.
Right.
Cheyenne O'Grady, I think, is still there, who's an interesting guy out of Arkansas. But it's telling that Bengals fans really want Thaddeus Moss. And probably, I wonder if maybe, because I mean, there's all of this stuff coming out. I think it was Schefter, that Burrow's being in contact with the organization for, the past couple of weeks and has been reading the playbook. whether maybe he hinted at them going after some LSU guys in round 7 or free agency.
Yeah, apparently Burrow was on with Mo Egger in the local Cincinnati radio shortly after he was drafted, and was asked something similar, and he gave a different answer than what Schefter put out there. So who knows? I mean, I think probably in these pre-draft meetings they held, it's probable that some of the schematic things and stuff were discussed. We're going to get out of here in just a minute. James, if you had to put a grade on what the Bengals have done with their first 6 picks, how would you grade it?
I like it overall. I think if I just seen that list of players pre-draft, without any context, I would probably give it an A+, maybe an A. But with a couple of things like, Josh Jones being there and pick 65, and other guys I really like falling more than expected, I would probably relegate it to maybe just a B+, I think. But I'm still super excited about all of these guys.
So one of our listeners reminded me, it's a point I brought up a couple of weeks ago, but one of our listeners reminded me that, the other thing with the Bengals and their offensive line situation, a lot of people wish they maybe addressed it a little earlier. I brought this point up a while ago, and like I said, I was just reminded of it. They are tops at the waiver wire claim. So when it's June 1st cuts, when it's final cuts, that sort of thing, if there is an offensive lineman that floats out there, maybe a veteran guy, that may be where they pounce on somebody, and they have the first right of refusal on some of these waiver wire claims. So that's something to note in terms of how they may be able to additionally help not only their offensive line, but their team in general. But we're going to get out of here because we're going to do another show in just a little bit with Matt Minnick, and John Sheeran will be joining us as well, kind of wrapping up the entire class. So please join us for that. It will be on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page and our YouTube channel, but we wanted to come at you with the first picks on day 3. We will be wrapping up. I can't wait to hear what Matt Minnick has to say about the Adeniji pick, because I know he was big on him. So James, very good having you on once again. Thanks for all the work you are doing behind the scenes. By the way, folks, he has already been in contact with some representatives to potentially get some of these draft picks on our program coming up here. So we'll see how that works out. Hopefully we can get that going. Yeah,
I like to think so. I think there's quite a bit of traction with getting ADG on the show. He's a great guy. And yeah, that'll be really fun. And some user comments, and I can't wait for all of these guys to get in their Bengals gear and get out on the field.
Yep, we're not in the business of over promising and under delivering, but I know you've been doing work and you've come through on many interview opportunities, including Alex Highsmith, who unfortunately went to the Steelers on night 2. Yeah, I know. I almost texted him saying congratulations or whatever, but I was like, I'll let him be. So Alex Highsmith, Trey Waynes, you were instrumental in getting us Solomon Wilcots onto the program as well, and we can't thank you enough for your work that you've done. Stay safe out in London, my friend. Thanks for coming on the show. For those of you tuning in live, we're again, you can get this show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Megaphone, YouTube, and all of the stuff is on cincyjungle.com. We'll be back on here in just a little bit with Coach Matt Minnick and John Sheeran to break down the entire draft class. For James Clayton, I'm Anthony Cosenza. We hope you've enjoyed the first 6 rounds of the draft. We'll see you in a little bit.